Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the first part of the Cyberdark Saga. Now, a lot of people are big haters on Cyberdarks. They think that Cyberdragons are better, they think that Cyberdarks are just a waste of space, but I disagree. So I have here 3 Cyberdark structure decks. For the first part here, we're going to open 3 structure decks, build a deck with what we have here, and in the future parts we'll expand upon this, and eventually we'll conclude with a Cyberdragons versus Cyberdark live duel. So stay tuned for that, but without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, we'll take a look at the content of the deck. As you know, it has Imperm, which is pretty good, but also has some amazing Cyberdark cards that a lot of people don't know about because a lot of people sleep on Cyberdarks. Very cream. But first of all, we have the mat, the most important part. We got your boy Cyberdark End Dragon. Awesome. Alright, here we go. The front card is Cyberdark Chimera, a very important card for Cyberdarks. Searches Power Bond, of course, because Power Bond's the best card in the game. Alright, so let's take a look here. We have Cyberdark Chimera, Cyberdark Realm, which searches Chimera, Cyber End Dragon, awesome, actually somewhat important in this deck, which is really cool. Cyberdark End Dragon, the main boss monster, it's a towers, it equips stuff to itself, it's a very good card. Cyberdark Horizon, okay, we have Cyberdragon Hers, Fusion Deployment, Imperm, very nice. We have Attachment, Cyburn, the original Cyberdragon, Zwei, we have Dry, Veer, a lot of useless cards. Naxter is very good. Core, let's go. Cyber Pharos, Cyber Valley, Cyber Phoenix, Cyberdark Horn, Cyberdark Edge, Cyberdark Keel, Cyberdark Cannon, Cyberdark Claw, Langling, we're not using this card. Jizurku, that's a great card, okay. Gizmeka Roach, that's actually really good, nice. Gale Dogra, Cyber Eternal, Cyber Repair Plant, Cyber Emergency, Cyber Load Fusion, Cyberdark Impact, Cyberdark Inferno, Future Fusion, let's go. Fusion Tag, Machine Dupe, pretty cool. Limiter Removal, Cyberdark Invasion, Cybernetic Revolution, Power Wall, Call It a Haunted, Paleozoic Canadia, Cybernetic Overflow, we have Chimera Tech Overdragon, we have Cyber Darkness Dragon, which can get you a few negates, pretty cool. Cyberdark Dragon, Power Bond, Overload Fusion, and there we go. So a good mix of pure Cyberdragon cards and Cyberdarks. Let's see what we can build with 3 structure decks. Alright, so I have assembled a Cyberdark deck using the 3 structure decks. As a baseline, it's not even half bad. So let's have a look at what the cards do. We'll begin with 3 copies of Cyberdark Chimera. When it's summoned, you can discard a spell or trap to search Power Bond from your deck to your hand. And then, once for the rest of your turn, you can banish fusion material from your graveyard when you fusion summon. So it's a fantastic card for going into some of your extra deck cards. Searches Power Bond and then allows you to Power Bond banish stuff from your graveyard to summon something. And also if it's sent to the graveyard, you can dump a Cyberdark card from your deck to the grave, which sets you up for stuff like Overload Fusion or even your Power Bond using its first effect. So 3 copies is pretty good. Next up, 3 copies of your Cyberdark Cannon, which is basically you discard it to search a Cyberdark monster. Also, if it's equipped to a monster and it's sent to the graveyard, you can draw a card. Your Cyber Darkness End Dragon equips stuff to it to get negates. So if you use your Cyber Darkness End Dragon, negate something by sending this to the grave, you'll also get a draw. So very nice card. You're going to run it either way just for the search effect, so 3 copies is essential. And next up, 3 copies of Cyberdark Claw, the same as Cyberdark Cannon, but it searches spells and traps. Also, if it's equipped to a monster and sent to graveyard, you can bring back a Cyberdark monster from your grave to your hand. And during damage calculation, if the monster equipped with this battles, you can dump a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. So again, we're running this mainly for the search effect, also counts as a Cyberdark, which is important for setting up your fusions, so 3 copies is a must. Next up, the bad cards, Cyberdark Keel, Cyberdark Edge, and Cyberdark Horn. We only run these because they're listed on Cyber Darkness Dragon. They don't really do anything else. They do count as Cyberdarks though, so in the grave they can be used as material for fusion summons, but basically running one of each is essential. Next up we have Attachment Cyburn. So you can equip this to a cyber monster you control, which can help you get your Cyber Darkness Dragon an extra negate, or your Cyberdark End Dragon an extra attack. Also, if it's sent to the graveyard while equipped to a cyber monster, you can special summon a cyber monster from your graveyard. So not a bad one of, I think we might replace this in the future, but for now, I think it's pretty good. Next up, 1 copy of Cyber Dragon, Now we do need to run one copy for certain Cyber Dragon effects. This is a Cyber deck, so of course we have to run one copy of the man himself, Cyber Dragon. Next up, 3 copies of Core searches any of your Cyber spells and traps, so you can search any of your Cyberdark spells and traps. One of your combos you can do is summon Core to search your Cyberdark Realm. Realm will search you your Cyberdark Chimera, and your Chimera can get you Power Bond, so you can try to OTK your opponent. It also counts as Cyber Dragon while on the field, so when we decide to upgrade this deck and put in a card like Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon, we can contact Fears our opponent's board using this. Next up, 1 Cyber Dragon Hers. When it's sent to the graveyard, you can add a Cyber Dragon from your deck or grave to your hand. It's nice to be able to search the 1-of Cyber Dragon, and we can search this using cards like Cyber Emergency, so definitely a good 1-of. Next up we have 1 Jizurku Machine Kaiju. We can search it using Repair Plant. It's nice to have 1 searchable Kaiju in the deck. For the spells now, we have triple Cyberdark Realm, searches you any Cyberdark monster. During your main phase, it also lets you do an additional normal summon of your Cyberdark monster. It also has a very unique effect to where if you use one of your Cyberdark monsters to equip a monster from your graveyard to themselves, you can actually equip a monster from your opponent's graveyard to it instead. Kind of niche, but not too bad if you want to get rid of something like your opponent's Promethean Princess. Seems like a pretty cool effect to have, but the first 2 effects are way more important. Next up, Cybernetic Horizon. It is always treated as a Cyberdark card, so we can always search it. So you can send 2 Cyber monsters, one from your hand and one from your deck, to the graveyard. Then you can add a Cyber monster from your deck to your hand, and send a Machine Cyber Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. So this is your main card for setting up your fusion plays, so definitely run it at 3. Next up, triple Cyber Emergency, searches any Light Machine that cannot be normal summoned or set, or a Cyber Dragon monster from your deck to your hand. So it cannot search any Cyberdarks, but it can search Core, which can essentially get you a Cyberdark. 1 copy of Cyberdark Inferno. It's a field spell which protects your Cyberdark monsters that are equipped with monsters from being destroyed by card effect or being targeted. You can also bounce a Cyberdark monster you control to normal summon 1 from your hand. Also when it's destroyed, you can add Poly or a fusion spell from your deck to your hand. So you're mainly using this for the protection effect. It's very good to have targeting and destruction protection on your Cyberdarks. You can search it, so 1 copy is more than enough. Next up, 1 Cyber Repair Plant. Since we're running Core, we might as well run this. If we have a Cyber Dragon monster in our graveyard, we can activate the effect where we can search for a Light Machine from our deck to our hand, which is any Light Machine, so it can be a Cyber Dragon or it can be our Kaiju, or we can recycle a Cyber Dragon monster from our graveyard into our deck. So 1 copy is pretty good because having a searchable Kaiju is very important. Next up, double Power Bond and 1 Overload Fusion. So as we know, Power Bond can be searched with our Chimera, so having this card in multiples is pretty good. And Overload Fusion is nice because we have so many cards in the graveyard that will basically always have Overload Fusion live. There's even a few cards in the deck that can search it, so this little ratio here I think is pretty good. Onto the traps now, we have triple Cyberdark Invasion. So it's a continuous trap, so once per turn we can target a Cyberdark monster we control and equip 1 machine or dragon monster from our graveyard to it, and then it gains 1000 attack. Or we can send 1 monster that's equipped to our Cyberdark monster to the graveyard to pop a card in the field. So a very nice end board piece to have, since a lot of our Cyberdark monsters gain effects in the graveyard. It's good to be able to pop a card and gain an effect in the graveyard. So I think 3 copies is pretty nice. 1 copy of Cybernetic Overflow. This specifically works with Cyber Dragons. You can banish Cyber Dragons from your graveyard with different levels to pop that many cards on the field. So definitely good in certain situations. If you have your graveyard full of Cyber Dragon monsters, you can search this and then be able to pop a bunch of cards in the field. We have Core, Hertz, and Cyber Dragon, so that's 3 Cyber Dragon monsters with different levels. So you can pop 3 cards in the field with this at most. Also, if it's destroyed by card effect, you can add 1 Cyber Spell Trap from your deck to your hand. So I think 1 copy is pretty cool, just to be able to pop a bunch of cards, so definitely consider running this. And finally, 3 Imperm, because this deck was kind enough to give us infinite impermanence, just a good hand trap to have. When we upgrade this deck, we'll obviously add more, but Imperm is just a great card to have to begin with. Alright, onto the extra deck. We have 3 copies of Cyberdark End Dragon, the main boss monster of Cyberdarks. It's a towers, it's unaffected by your opponent's effects. It's a 5k body, which is very difficult to get over. Once per turn, you can equip 1 monster from either player's graveyard to it, and it gains an additional attack for each monster equipped to it. So a fantastic boss monster, a bit tricky to summon, but in this deck there are plenty of ways to get it out. 3 copies mainly because we have to run every extra deck card in these structure decks if we want an extra deck of 15 cards. This will be changed later on, but for now 3 copies is fine. Next up we have Cyber Darkness Dragon, Another very good boss monster, arguably better than Cyberdark End Dragon because it actually has Omni Negates. So it requires 5 Cyberdark effect monsters, but he's not too hard to summon in this deck. So when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can send one monster equipped to him to the graveyard to negate the effect. Not once per turn, so he has a negate for every equipped card on him, and it's an Omni Negate, so very strong. If you can set this up, your opponent's going to have a very hard time playing through it. You can also boost his attack up, because when he's summoned, you can target a machine or dragon monster in your graveyard, equip it to it, and it gains the attack of that monster. So it can get pretty big, get pretty hard to kill, so this is definitely one of the best cards in the deck. Next up, 3 copies of Chimera Tech Over Dragon. When it's summoned, it nukes your field, but it gains 800 attack times the amount of fusion material used for it. It needs Cyber Dragon and 1+ machine monsters, so you're basically going to be using this if you have Overload Fusion in your hand, and you have your graveyard full of monsters. You can get this guy's attack up really high. He gains an attack on monsters for every card uses material, so this can be a good way to clear your opponent's board. In future, we'll probably run only 1 copy, but 3 is alright for now. Next up, 3 copies of Cyber End Dragon. Actually important because this is your way of getting out your Cyberdark End Dragon. We definitely wouldn't run more than 1 copy in an upgraded build, but for now 3 copies is alright. And finally 3 copies of Cyberdark Dragon. Not very good. We make do with what we have. It's a card. This will probably not be in any finalized build. We do have a little side deck here. We have the 2 remaining Kaiju in case we're going up against a deck like Pearly or a deck that ends on towers where we really want to see a Kaiju. Running more copies is always good. More Cyber Dragon in case we're going up against a machine deck where we want to contact fuse. Right now this won't really matter, but once we put in Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon, this will matter a good bit. 3 copies of Fusion Deployment specifically to get out your Cyber Dragon, but you can also summon your Cyberdark monsters. I guess that is one use for Cyberdark Dragon. We can actually specifically summon one of our Cyberdark monsters from our deck, so not a terrible option. 3 copies of Limiter Removal if we're going for the OTK, very funny. 3 copies of Paleozoic Canadia. Basically acts as Book of Moon, not terrible, but Book of Moon itself is just a much better card. And finally 2 more copies of Overflow in case we're against a matchup where we really want to pop our opponent's cards. So there we go, that's it for the 3 structure deck build of Cyberdarks. Now in the future, in part 2 of the Cyberdark Saga, we'll be upgrading this deck with better cards, we'll see what we can make. But I don't think this is terrible for 3 structure decks. I think you can have like a bit of success with it. Definitely seems pretty fun, so it's going to be something fun to try. So stay tuned for more Cyberdark content. You're going to see a few more videos in the future, and we'll see if Cyberdarks can actually defeat Cyber Dragons. So stay tuned for that.